Hi again, friends. Back in June, I talked about prophets and angels, and it was with a bit of a heavy heart, but this week I promised to strike a more hopeful tone. After all, considering Pastor Jen's message from the beginning of August, she observed that prophets offer words of hope when things are dark, so we're going to lighten things up a little bit. So today I'd like to explore the ideas of movement and motive. So let's first consider movement. In the physical world, things move when a force is applied. A car accelerates when you put your foot on the gas. The spin of a baseball induces lift, pulling it into a curved trajectory we call movement on the pitch. But in our society, a movement occurs when collectively how we think and do things moves from one frame of reference to another. There is a collection and development of some idea and a change in perspective that is an impetus for real change. And while seldom is a movement complete, there are always those that will go backwards, and there are those that, fearful of change, cling to an old way of thinking. And even within that, there's a point where, some say a tipping point, where people come to accept, understand this new thing. And it's at that point where anybody that maybe opposes it either comes to accept it themselves, grudgingly maybe, or they get out of the way, or in some cases they get run over. And at this point, society has moved on. They've made that decision collectively. That movement has been fulfilled to a degree, and things fundamentally change. That's the new status quo, and there's a new social contract. And in a way, we've already had one of these. It's been a win for us and our brothers and sisters in our congregation and our community that are LGBTQ. And it was interesting in the decision written by the Justice Roberts was not strictly on a matter of equal protection, which is important, but the observation that society had in effect decided this. So the equal protection argument, rooted in fairness and principles of justice and collective humanity, that could have been made at any time. And the argument would have been the same on its intellectual merit. But additionally, society has come to a point where, and this is a good thing, that our gay family members, neighbors, co-workers are, if they want to participate in marriage, it will be fine, and it has been, and it's wonderful. And so one could say that that's a movement, and it's a long time coming. When we look at the past, going back decades, and what's come before, and there's many things that have come to bring this to be. And while no doubt it remains a challenge for people in certain circumstances to come out and accept their identity or be accepted for it, that in a way has been much easier by the brave men and women that have shown the way. So what does it take to form a movement? Courage, certainly, a righteous cause, sometimes a collection of events, maybe shocking ones, as we had recently. And it's a combination of all of these things, but it starts with some people that stand up, that take that leadership role. And so anyway, to illustrate the growth of a movement, I think of a song by Arlo Guthrie that came out a year before I was born. And it's a bit of a wonder of storytelling, nearly 19 minutes long. You don't hear many 19-minute songs on the radio, but in fact I have heard this song on the radio. I was coming home from the airport with Grant and Noah about 12 years ago. I had been out to Colorado to in the winter to have the boys go snowboarding and see my sister, and believe it or not, they played Alice's Restaurant in its entirety on the radio. And so to cut things a little bit short, the gist of it is Alice has a bit of a hippie restaurant, and her hippie friends want to do her a solid and clean her place up. But they gather all the things up and load the trash in a truck. But they get to the dump and it's closed for Thanksgiving. So here they are with this truckload of stuff, and they're frustrated. They're on their way home and seeing another pile of trash at the bottom of a ditch. Rather than bring that pile up, they throw theirs down, and there you have it. For their good deed, however, they come to be arrested. Fast forward, Arlo's in the draft office, getting all his medical inspections and everything else, and it comes down to one of the forms, and it's, have you ever been arrested? And sure enough, he was, with quite a story. And here he is in the Vietnam era, right? They're determining if he's moral enough to go kill people in Vietnam for littering. But anyway, in this, he has this notion, and apologies for the language, but it's a notion of a movement. And so hopefully we know a little better on some of the language 53 years later. But anyway, here we go. Arlo Guthrie. Okay, so was that fun? I hope so. In the gospel reading from Matthew today, a woman shouts for Jesus to save her daughter overcome with demons, which by modern medical terms might have been a seizure disorder or mental illness. And we know she stood before the Lord knowing he was the Lord because she said as much, and because she believed that she could provide her what she wanted, what she needed for her loved one. And the disciples wanted to send her away. She was a Canaanite, and so not of the faith. But we've got to remember, Jesus was starting a movement of love and salvation for the whole world, not just the in-group. And kind of reflect a little bit on another one of Pastor Jen's sermons this week about, you know, the notion of eating kosher and eating kosher with the right sort of people. So that was being broken here with this movement. And it wasn't that strict adherence to what you eat and who you eat with that makes it holy. Goes in the sewer either way, as the gospel says in the verses today. But what comes from our heart? What is that essence of gospel love that comes from our heart? And Jesus showed us the way in his heart by healing that woman's daughter and in an answer to her faith. But why? Which brings us really to the second word of the day, and that's motive. So interestingly, motive as an adjective means producing motion. So in other words, an automotive moves itself. Okay, auto moves itself. Locomotive is moving places, which if you think about it, at the time when people would either have to walk or ride a horse and to go on a journey, a train was quite magical. You would step on the train, you'd sit down, you'd relax, and you'd step off, you'd be in another place. So loco, place, motion, motive. But as a noun, it's a reason for doing something. It's more of a concept or idea. And in the courtroom, we know motive matters. The same outcome with different motives is judged more or less harshly based on what motivated somebody to commit some crime. And so in a way, motive and movement go together. If we consider the Black Lives Matter movement, it is really both simple and complex. But from its founding, it's a reaction, it's motivated by systemic racism and injustice in whatever form it takes. So it's got at its core a simple and fundamental issue. Okay? But as we truly come to grips with, you know, all of the forms of this very complex issue, you know, education, healthcare, zoning laws, criminal justice, enforcement of laws, employment, commerce, the whole bit. Our racist past is ingrained in all of our institutions, and unraveling and removing these injustices that have threaded and metastasized into our society is a massive undertaking, however necessary. But we need to consider Well, why not? So, by its scope, it's perceived as perhaps insurmountable, a challenge for the faint of heart in positions of comfort. But as we dig in, we've got to really consider what motivates us. What's the motive? So, some have taken a risk and been leaders and stood at the forefront of this issue. And others, in turn, inspired by them, have been educated, convinced, and have been encouraged to do so. And perhaps for others it's a bit of a bandwagon thing, or maybe a fashion statement. So even though some are leaders, some are followers, and some are joiners, a durable and pervasive movement seems to be building. And will we support that? So, as a fad or a fashion statement, it certainly isn't going to, have a sustainable level of commitment, right? And we have to evaluate, okay, are you interested or committed? So, perhaps as story after story is told, it will continue to energize and inspire, and in that inspiration we can find progress and hope. But it's also important to remember that for those that are committed, you need to encourage and foster and grow and bring along the people however they might come. So any step forward is progress. So it needs to be a selfless act. So, this is hard work, and changing how the world works is a scary thing. So we need to kind of keep it simple, keep it relatable, keep it to the point. And there's room for growth in all of us and everyone. And so this is really part of our calling as Christians, to go. And this is really a manifestation of Jesus' mission, a mission of God, of love and redemption. So anyway, with that, let's take a look at how that happens. So I have another video for you. Enjoy.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut, and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers, because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that one too. And so, to start a movement, someone has to be the shirtless lunatic dancing first. Okay. Not many of us are so brave, and I'd be ashamed to admit what it takes to get me to dance in public. Anyhow, but maybe could be second or third. Do you dance to be seen, or do you rush in late for fear of missing out? Okay, so we need to examine our motives. What comes from our heart? Wherever we start, though, it can be fine. I think of a funny story where President Carter he's been involved with Habitat for Humanity for a very long time, and shortly after he was president, there was a bill happening in this community, and this was before people really knew how involved and committed he was to that organization, and so these people showed up in their suits and ties, and all of the wheelers and dealers and well connected in the town, and then the President Carter and his wife Rosalind showed up in their jeans and their work shirts and bandana tied around the neck and a ball cap. And he shamed these people as only a humble person can. And he said, "We came here to work," and they couldn't do otherwise. And so they ruined a pair of expensive shoes and likely a set of expensive clothes, pounding nails, digging holes, and doing what you might do to help someone build a house. So with that, I'll ask y'all, just where are you going to start? It doesn't really matter where you start. It's just important to make that first step, and then another, and then another, and then, as Arlo Guthrie would say, you can get anything you want at Alice's restaurant. Thanks, everybody.